I was only at the hospital because I had brought my mother-in-law, Susan, for a checkup. The last thing I expected was to see my own husband, Mark, walking through the corridor. He was with his secretary, Chloe, gently supporting her arm. She was pregnant. Mark saw me and his face stiffened. He walked over and explained, in a voice devoid of any real emotion, that he and Chloe had an unplanned pregnancy. He then delivered the final blow. From now on, she would be moving into our home, and he expected me to take care of her. I looked over at his parents, who had been waiting with me. To my utter shock, my father-in-law, Robert, and Susan were actually clapping their hands in approval. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told Mark I disagreed. His response was cold. "Don't be ungrateful, Alice. For 6 years of our marriage, I have been tolerant and patient with you and your entire family." He seemed to have conveniently forgotten that his current lifestyle, and that of his parents, was entirely funded by my family's money. A bitter sneer formed on my lips as I took out my phone. I dialed my assistant's number. My instructions were simple: cut off all living expenses for Mark's family and have a divorce agreement printed and ready for my signature. My mother-in-law, hearing this, suddenly clutched her chest, her blood pressure clearly rising, and my father-in-law rushed to her side, looking extremely worried. I was the one who drove them to the emergency room for treatment. As we waited, Susan turned to me, her voice weak. "Alice, I'm really sorry to trouble you like this, having to accompany me to the doctor in the middle of the night." I forced a polite smile. "It's my duty, Mom. Mark is busy with work, and taking care of you both is my responsibility as your daughter-in-law." After we finally got her medicine and were about to leave, someone suddenly greeted me. "Alice, what a coincidence!" The person speaking to me was Chloe, my husband's secretary. And to my surprise, standing right beside her, holding her steady, was my husband, Mark. Chloe deliberately caressed her slightly bulging belly, her eyes making sure my gaze followed her hand. Instantly, flames of anger surged within me. My reaction seemed to be exactly what Chloe had anticipated. She quickly grabbed my hand, her touch feeling like ice, and softly tried to dissuade me. "Sister Alice, this is my fault. Please don't take it out on Mark." I hadn't even managed to ask a single question, but her simple, rehearsed words told me everything I needed to know. Mark observed the entire situation keenly, his body angled as if he were ready at any moment to shield Chloe from me. I glared angrily at him and demanded, "Aren't you going to explain?" Mark just frowned and sighed deeply. He then took Chloe's hand and said softly to her, "I'll take you to get the medicine first. Leave this matter to me." His gentle voice, a tone he hadn't used with me in years, sent shivers down my spine. In our entire 6 years of marriage, he had never spoken to me with such tenderness. Under my furious gaze, he accompanied Chloe to the pharmacy window and collected several large packages of pregnancy-nourishing medicine. The irony was staggering. Here I was, accompanying his own biological mother for a midnight hospital visit, while he was busy escorting his secretary for her prenatal care. I found a chair in the sterile, brightly lit hallway and sat down, my mind numb, waiting for Mark to give me an explanation. At this moment, my parents-in-law walked right past me, ignoring me completely, and went straight to talk to the two of them. Mark wore a look of sincere apology as he held his mother's hand. "I didn't mean to hide it from you deliberately," he said earnestly. "I hope you can understand. Chloe and I love each other, and the child in her womb is your own grandchild. Please don't blame her." During the 6 years of our marriage, whenever I had a minor disagreement with my mother-in-law, Mark would always ask me to yield to his mother, using her old age and health as the reason. I used to think Mark was just that kind of temperament, or perhaps it was a sign of his deep filial piety. But now, seeing how he shielded Chloe at every turn, I realized I was the fool all along. Chloe also took Susan's hand. "I didn't mean to ruin Mark's marriage," she said, her voice trembling. "We're truly in love, and I want to have a child with him. I hope Uncle and Auntie can understand." When my mother-in-law heard that Chloe was pregnant, she beamed with joy. But then she glanced at me furtively, a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. After all, I was the one who provided her with a large sum of living expenses every single month. Chloe's financial resources were absolutely incomparable to mine. My heart turned to a block of ice. Mark, my husband, was actually brazenly flaunting his pregnant mistress right in front of me. He had trapped me in this horribly awkward and humiliating situation without a single care in the world. Does he really think I'm that easy to bully? That I have no temper? Chloe seemed to feel the oppressive atmosphere and began to sob mournfully. You can say whatever you want about me, she whimpered, but the child is innocent. I hope you won't harm my child in the future. She continued to whimper and sob, tears rolling down her cheeks like a scene from a movie, a sight that would move anyone to pity. Mark immediately looked heartbroken. He wiped away her tears, his voice filled with resentment as he looked at me. Mom, say something. Don't you know pregnant women need emotional stability? I plan to take Chloe home tomorrow and take care of her by my side. Is that okay? After 6 years of our marriage, I still hadn't gotten pregnant, and I knew my in-laws had been gossiping about my infertility behind my back for years. Perhaps my father-in-law had considered this point as he finally spoke up. After all, Chloe is carrying the flesh and blood of our family. It's only right to bring her home. Let's all hold back our tempers and get along peacefully. Just like that, in a matter of minutes, they reached a mutual agreement. And for a moment, I felt like a complete and utter outsider. I couldn't help but let out a cold, sharp laugh. Doesn't anyone care to ask for my opinion? With a displeased expression, Mark looked even more displeased than I was. He shielded Chloe behind him and said, You heard everything that was said. What's left to discuss with you? I couldn't help but sneer. At home, I wash his clothes, cook his meals, and take care of his parents. And not only did he give me this huge surprise, but he also treated me with such a bossy, dismissive attitude. Chloe started crying again upon seeing this. Mark, maybe I should just leave and then get rid of the baby. My mother-in-law immediately became displeased. This is our family's grandson. You can't leave, and you absolutely cannot abort the child. As soon as the words fell, Mark immediately pointed his finger at my nose. You say something. Look how scared Chloe is. The child is mine. If you have any objections, direct them at me, not at Chloe. Chloe urgently grabbed Mark's hand. No, Mark, I don't want you to be sad. It would break my heart. They held hands, looking into each other's tearful eyes, as if I were some wicked, evil woman determined to tear them apart. The in-laws nodded with faint smiles, clearly showing their satisfaction with Chloe. I couldn't bear to watch the disgusting display any longer, so I turned and left. I drove myself home. Early the next morning, the sound of laughter and chatter could be heard from the yard. It turned out that last night, Mark had already brought his female secretary home. When the butler brought me breakfast, he quietly told me that last night, Chloe had intended to move into my master bedroom. However, she was stopped by Mark's mother, who said, Alice is, after all, the heiress of the Ross family. We'll need her help for many things in the future, so we can't completely offend her just yet. The butler, afraid that I might be angry, glanced at me cautiously. At this point, I simply signaled for him to continue. He added, She also said that all of Chloe's expenses during her pregnancy will be covered by you. And after the child is born, you'll be the one to take care of it because you can't have children yourself. So this will let you experience the joy of motherhood. Hearing this, my face turned ashen, and I asked through gritted teeth, What else did she say? The butler hesitated. They even said that after you die, the Ross family's entire fortune would be inherited by this child. I laughed in sheer, unadulterated anger. How dare they entertain such wishful, delusional thinking? Though I was furious, I wasn't ready to confront them yet. This wasn't the right moment. I instructed the butler to carry on as usual. Pushing open the blinds in the master bedroom, I saw Mark helping Chloe take a slow walk in the courtyard. A bittersweet ache filled my heart as memories flooded in. 6 years ago, I had stubbornly insisted on marrying Mark through tears and arguments. For him, I rejected the arranged marriage my parents had set up with the Warner family. The Warner family is one of the top-tier families in the city, and Ethan Warner has been my childhood sweetheart. But I always felt that Ethan was more like an older brother to me, and I didn't have those kinds of romantic feelings for him. I told my mom that I wanted to decide my own marriage and that Ethan might not even like me. But my parents said, Ethan wouldn't wait for you to walk to school together every single day if he didn't like you. If he didn't like you, he wouldn't keep finding excuses to come to your house under the pretense of doing homework together. Truth be told, back then, I didn't even care whether Ethan liked me or not because I was completely and utterly infatuated with Mark. I met him by the school playground where a few drunk boys had surrounded me, demanding my contact information. I gave it to them, but they wouldn't let it go, insisting I join them for drinks. Amid the shoving, Mark charged over and knocked them all out with a few punches and kicks. That day, he had just finished playing basketball wearing his jersey, so tall and looking so radiant. I couldn't tear my eyes away. Being such a height enthusiast, I couldn't resist asking for his contact information myself. From then on, I deliberately created chances to bump into him, just to exchange a few more words with him. One glance felt like an eternity, and just like that, I willingly followed in his footsteps. After we got married, Mark proposed to help manage my company. He said he wanted me to be a happy, full-time housewife. I agreed, thinking it was only natural for a couple to work together in harmony. Since he wanted to make a career for himself as his wife, I felt I should support him unconditionally. My parents both advised me to think it through carefully. "Does he only like our family's financial situation and not truly love you?" they asked. I immediately had a big argument with my parents, saying that was absolutely impossible. "Don't slander him like this anymore. We truly love each other." Mark is from a mountainous hometown, and his family conditions were quite modest. After getting married, I brought his parents to live with me at the Ross family compound, just to make it easier to take care of them. My in-laws quit their jobs at the small workshop in their hometown and now live very comfortably on the monthly allowance I provide them. Then they started boasting everywhere about their son becoming a boss, which led to many of Mark's family relatives coming to me for help. Young women wanting to get married would ask me to find them well-established families in the city. Young men who had graduated also came to me to help arrange jobs for them. For families like Mark's, I did my best to accommodate their requests. After all, we were once married, so helping out their families seemed like no big deal. On the eve of my engagement, Ethan gave me a share transfer agreement. He said that with these shares, if my marriage ever failed, I would have the confidence to walk away from Mark. He solemnly promised, "Besides the Ross family, you have me. If he ever dares to betray you, I won't let him off easy." I laughed at him back then. I firmly believed in my judgment. Mark will never let me down. Looking back now, everyone's advice to me was right. Only I was love-struck and foolishly insisted on clinging to him like an idiot. Even if I catered to his every whim after marriage, he still found fault with everything, saying I had a bad temper and was not as virtuous as other men's wives. I changed my habits for him, and even my best friends laughed at me, saying a pampered young lady like me had become unrecognizable for a man. As a result, my parents-in-law were very satisfied with me, and his relatives also praised me for being beautiful and kind-hearted. Only Mark could still always find faults with me. I always thought it was because I wasn't good enough. Now I realize he never loved me at all. He just used me as a stepping stone. How could he ever think well of me? When lunchtime came, Chloe came to my door to call me to eat, but I couldn't be bothered to respond. She actually started crying right there at my doorstep, which of course attracted Mark. "Alice seems to really dislike me," she sobbed to him. I kindly called her for dinner, but she scolded me. I opened the door to find Chloe still crying pitifully, with Mark holding her comfortingly in his arms, clearly distressed. "Don't cry. I'll talk to her later," he soothed. Chloe saw me come out and handed me a lipstick. "Sister Alice, this is my gift to you. Let's get along well as a family from now on, okay?" A family? She wants to openly move into my home and be a family with me? I knocked the lipstick out of her hand. "Dream on! Who are you putting on this fake act for?" Chloe burst into tears again with a wail and hid in Mark's arms. Mark stormed over furiously and slapped me hard across the face. "Alice, I just told you yesterday that Chloe is pregnant and needs to stay emotionally stable. You're truly a vicious woman. Are you trying to make her die of anger?" In his eyes, I was actually a vicious woman. His gaze was fierce, as if he wanted to tear me apart. That slap shattered whatever remaining affection I still held for him. Now I finally understood where he found the audacity to hit me. It was my years of obedience to his every word, my tolerance towards his entire family. This made him forget, by accident, that he is just my family's live-in son-in-law. I immediately struck back with both hands, delivering two sharp slaps that landed squarely on Mark's cheeks. I used all my strength, and his cheeks instantly turned red and swollen. With an expression of utter disbelief, he retorted, "Alice Ross, how dare you hit me?" I shook my numb right hand. "You were the one who started it, so why are you getting so worked up? As the esteemed heiress of the Ross family, how dare a mere live-in son-in-law like you humiliate me so casually?" Susan quickly stepped forward to mediate. "Alice, Mark acted on impulse. Don't take it to heart." Then she lightly nudged Mark and gave him a meaningful look. Mark was also hitting me for the first time, and it was clear he was nervous. But with Chloe here, Mark's male pride kicked in. He even turned his head away, unwilling to admit his mistake. "Mark!" Susan shouted angrily. She was relatively clear-headed and understood that if the situation continued, Mark would definitely not gain any advantage. "Fine," Mark finally mumbled. "I got carried away for a moment. But if you had obediently come to dinner with Chloe, how could what happened later have occurred?" This was no apology. It was outright blaming me. My heart turned ice cold. I didn't even join them for dinner that evening. I didn't wake up until noon the next day, skipped lunch with them too, and went straight out. My assistant told me that the office gossip has already spread like wildfire. They're all saying my husband brought his secretary home and that she's been pregnant for a while now. Just as I stepped out of the office building, my husband actually texted me, asking me to bring back 2 boxes of Hawthorne cakes for Chloe when I returned. He said she might be carrying a boy since she's craving sour flavors. He even had the gall to suggest I should buy some gift as an apology for yelling at Chloe yesterday. This text made me find the whole situation quite amusing. I replied flatly, "I'm afraid you haven't even grasped the situation at all." Just after I sent it, the butler sent me another message. He said, "Chloe took all the expensive health supplements your mother gave you, claiming they would benefit her fetus." He also said Mark's family was overjoyed. Mark made it clear that she could ask for anything she wanted or craved in the household. I never expected that my mother's thoughtful gesture would end up benefiting an outsider. Even the usually most clear-headed and rational Susan had silently acquiesced. Since they've gone this far in their insolence, there's no need for me to save face for them anymore. I immediately called a high-level meeting at the company to readjust personnel arrangements and work deployments. I then announced, "I want to return to the Ross family company. I am dismissing Mark from his position as general manager and firing him. From now on, he is not allowed to set foot in this company." The room erupted in an uproar. Without any further explanation, I instructed my assistant to make the announcement public. Mark and his family want a chubby grandson? Let them spend their own money to raise one. After handling these matters, I returned to my parents' place. Ever since I announced my decision, Mark had been calling me nonstop, but I simply refused to answer. Seeing me so dispirited, my mother asked with concern, "Alice, what's wrong with you? What happened?" Her caring words immediately made me lose control of my emotions, and I threw myself into her arms, crying uncontrollably. I've always been the little princess at home since I was a child, never having suffered any real grievances. In fact, I've never even cried in front of my mom, so when she saw me like this, she immediately knew something was seriously wrong. Her phone suddenly vibrated a few times, and she picked it up to glance at it. She must have understood by then. "Alice, why didn't you tell me sooner, after suffering such a great injustice?" I cried even harder, taking a long time to finally calm down. Back then, I was the one who insisted on marrying Mark, that scoundrel. Now that something like this has happened, I have only myself to blame. I've let down all your kindness and truly feel too ashamed to trouble you any further. Mom got a little angry after hearing that. "What nonsense about letting us down? Your dad and I will always be your strongest support. I told you long ago Mark was no good, but it's not too late now. Since he dared to treat you like this, you can absolutely find someone else." I cried in my mom's arms for a long time. Mom is a very gentle person, but when it comes to Mark's actions, she still couldn't suppress her overwhelming anger. Dad came back at this moment, and coincidentally, Ethan Warner returned with him. I quickly wiped away my tears, pretending nothing had happened. Ethan, you're such a busy man. How do you have time to come to my house with my dad? My mom gave me a light poke. Ethan hasn't been to our house for a long time. He must have come specifically because he heard you were back. I quickly stood up from the sofa, feeling somewhat at a loss. Ethan looked me up and down for a while before sighing and saying, "How did you become so quiet all of a sudden? The spoiled and domineering young lady who's been used to having her way since childhood? How come after getting married and suffering such great grievances, she only dares to run back home and cry to her mother? When faced with hatred, you should fight back on the spot. That's more like your temper." Ethan must have heard the rumors that were flying around outside, so he knew there were problems in my marriage. Though his eyes were filled with concern, I didn't want him to see my current state of embarrassment at all. I turned away uneasily, only to be pulled back by him. "We haven't finished talking yet. Where do you think you're going?" I couldn't hold back as my eyes reddened again. Ethan hurriedly released his hand, looking panicked. I'm sorry. I was rude just now. I apologize." Before the words even finished, 2 streams of hot tears had already rolled down my cheeks. Ethan panicked as he wiped the tears from my face, clumsily smoothing my hair. "Maybe you should hit me a few times. I can't stand seeing you cry, you know that." It's true. Whenever I cried as a child, he'd fuss with my hair just like this. Who would have thought that now, as the decisive CEO of the Warner Corporation, he still comforts me the same way he used to? Suddenly, my phone rang. Mark angrily demanded on the other end, "Alice Ross, where the hell did you go to buy hawthorn cake? Don't you know there's a pregnant woman at home waiting to eat it?" My parents also heard Mark's arrogant and domineering tone. Ethan was so angry that he snatched my phone and hung up directly, then snapped angrily, "That arrogant fool will pay for this sooner or later." I didn't go home that day. No matter how many times Mark called, I wouldn't answer. It wasn't until noon the next day that I returned home. Mark was sitting on the sofa, glaring at me without saying a word. I ignored him and went straight back to my room. The butler cautiously came over to tell me, "You weren't home yesterday, and that Chloe kept fussing all night about wanting to eat hawthorn cake, keeping everyone awake the whole night. She woke up in a bad mood this morning and even scolded me for the food being terrible, saying if I didn't want to work anymore, I should pack up and leave immediately. If you hadn't already given me a heads up, I would have quit long ago." I told the butler, "Hold on for a few more days. If you want to destroy something, you must first let it go wild. Chloe thinks she can walk all over me just because she's carrying a child in her belly. On this point, she has absolutely miscalculated." After learning what had happened at home that day, I went downstairs to find Mark. I sat coldly in front of him, staring at the still visible slap mark on his face. Before I could speak, he angrily confronted me with a barrage of questions. "Alice, you finally decided to come home?" I couldn't help but burst out laughing. "This is my home. When I come back is none of your business." At that moment, Chloe stormed in angrily with her parents. She slammed a bank card onto the table in front of her and roared with extreme dissatisfaction. "Mark, didn't you say this card could be used freely? Why did the clerk say it couldn't process the payment? I had to ask my uncle and aunt to pay for me, but they didn't even have enough money combined to cover a 2,000 yuan bag." Mark exclaimed in shock. "That's impossible. This card has no spending limit. It was given to me by Alice." At this point, he turned to look at me and even questioned me. "Alice, was it your doing?" At this stage, I had no intention of saving any face for him at all. "It was me who stopped it. I won't let you spend, so you can't spend. What can you do about it?" As the words fell, Chloe, with reddened eyes, coquettishly leaned towards Mark. "Mark, you must handle this properly. I've set my eyes on 3 bags and really want to buy them." Mark certainly didn't want to lose face in front of his beloved woman, so he pulled me aside to discuss, but was immediately pinned to the table by my pre-arranged bodyguards. Mark shouted in furious rage, "Alice, what are you trying to do?" I straightened my collar and spoke to him coldly. "What the hell do you think you are? After slapping me, you still expect me to obey your every whim?" Mark's parents, seeing I had bodyguards, finally spoke up to mediate. This is all a misunderstanding. Mark never meant to harm you. Let's talk this over properly. I snorted coldly and retorted, discussion? If I hadn't brought bodyguards with me today, would I have been able to leave easily without giving you the money? Having been exposed, Susan was left speechless. Chloe was too frightened to speak. I sneered at her. So much for true love. Running away at the first sign of trouble. Mark immediately snapped at me. If you've got a problem, take it up with me. Don't take it out on Chloe. I'm speechless. Mark is such a clown. He can't even save himself, yet he still defends her. Chloe saw Mark still backing her up and immediately chimed in. It's not that I don't care about Mark, but I'm carrying a baby. If anything happens, none of us can take the responsibility. I smiled, just wanting to gently touch her belly, but it was Robert who pushed me hard to the ground. That was his grandson. He no longer cared whether I was his cash cow or not. Alice, please stay away from my grandson. I sat on the ground in pain, remembering the first time I met Mark's parents. I had brought gifts to their house to meet them, and they cried tears of joy. Their son had finally found a wife. They were so excited they could have prepared 10 tables of dishes to welcome me, but now, for the sake of the child in the other woman's belly, he directly laid hands on me. After a few minutes of standoff, Ethan arrived as promised. Seeing me sitting on the ground, Ethan roared, "Who did this?" I pointed at Robert. Ethan's bodyguard immediately went over and restrained him. Mark screamed frantically, "Let go of my dad, what do you think you're doing?" I had the bodyguards tie him to a chair, and if he cursed, they'd slap his mouth. With a crimson face, I gripped Mark by the neck and told him, "I want to give you a surprise, and you'll definitely thank me after you get it." Mark had already been beaten until his mouth was bleeding. His parents also roared in anger, but it was of no use. Chloe was terrified, standing frozen in place. I pinched her chin and asked her, "Are you sure the child in your belly is Mark's?" Mark raged in shock. "What do you mean? Don't talk nonsense." Actually, yesterday, I had asked Ethan to do me a favor. Given the Warner family's influence, accomplishing this matter wouldn't be difficult. I displayed the photos Ethan sent to me, showing Chloe with her ex-boyfriend, along with their chat records. Seeing this evidence, Chloe looked horrified. How did you get these things?" Mark finally realized that Chloe was entangled with another man besides him. Chloe originally looked down on Mark as a live-in son-in-law, but after another man got her pregnant, he simply vanished. He didn't even leave her money for the abortion. Chloe had no choice but to turn to Mark as the unlucky fool. Ever since I saw Mark taking Chloe for her prenatal checkup at the hospital that day, I started making all the arrangements. No matter how much I may have loved Mark, I'm not foolish enough to hand over my Ross family's fortune to him. If I can give him the company's management rights, I'm confident I can take them back just as easily. With all the facts laid out before him, Mark yelled at Chloe in anger. "Is this for real? Have you been playing me for a fool all along?" Even at this point, Mark was still obsessing over whether there was ever any love between them. I publicly declared to Mark, "You've been fired by the Ross family. I'll thoroughly investigate all financial records under your management, and you'll repay every single irregular transaction." Mark was completely panicked. "Alice, this is all a misunderstanding. I was deceived. Please forgive me just this once, okay?" Standing nearby, Ethan could no longer bear his hypocrisy and slammed the divorce papers right into his face. "Sign it. Stop pretending to beg for forgiveness here. I believe you also understand Alice's personality. Once she's made up her mind, you can't change it." Mark's parents, upon learning the truth, were filled with regret and helped Mark plead for mercy. I sneered and stopped them. "Enough. It's all too late now. What's the use of saying all this?" That very day, Mark's family, along with Chloe, were all expelled by me from the Ross household. I then informed the property management to add all 4 of them to my Ross family's blacklist. I don't want them showing up at my doorstep ever again. After everything was settled, Ethan and I went abroad. He said he could help me try to pursue my lifelong dream of painting. As the only child in the family, I've always felt that I should go into business and inherit the family enterprise. Painting could only be a hobby. I once mentioned to Mark that Those were things only penniless, impoverished scholars would do. He has strong self esteem. He believes his woman should only be a down to earth, capable homemaker. So, my dream has always been shelved. I just casually mentioned it to Ethan yesterday, and he had it all arranged for me today. There were dozens of missed calls on my phone after landing. My assistant's message informed me that Mark showed up at the company with his whole family, making a scene and bringing the media along. Ethan noticed my frown and immediately snatched the phone from me. "Let me handle this kind of nonsense from now on." A simple sentence that made my heart tremble uncontrollably. After marrying Mark, I've had to handle many things on my own, and it's been a long time since I've experienced such tenderness. Mark has been so busy these past few years that he didn't even accompany me when I was sick. Even the fact that I couldn't conceive a child. When I asked him to accompany me to the hospital for checkups, he always lied about being too busy with work. The blame for infertility was always pinned on me, yet every gynecological examination I had came back normal. I carefully nurtured his feelings, only to end up with such an outcome. After arriving in Japan, I discussed initial collaborations with several renowned manga artists. After finishing our discussion, I treated Ethan to a meal. He gave me a bouquet of Chinese roses. Seeing the flowers, I froze for a moment. "What's wrong?" he asked. I smiled and replied, "If I told you, you might laugh at me. For the past few years, Mark has been sending me roses, but I've told him more than once that what I really like are Chinese roses. But he kept sending the wrong ones." After all these years apart, Ethan still remembers my love for Chinese roses. It all became clear to me. It's not that Mark forgot, he just never truly cared. That night, I got drunk. Before, because I thought I couldn't have children, I held myself to impossibly high standards and never touched alcohol. Ethan escorted me back to my room, whispering something in my ear, but in my dazed state, I couldn't quite make it out. After spending 7 days in Japan, I slept in until late morning every day, then went out with Ethan to shop and watch the sea, playing until the early hours before returning. I felt an unprecedented sense of relaxation and had figured out many things. I'm certain that divorcing Mark is something I don't regret in the slightest. Domestically, Mark had been refusing to sign the divorce papers and kept causing scenes at the company every day. After returning to the country, I immediately sued him in court. Mark came from a poor family, and even after being kicked out, he refused to return to his hometown. The whole family was struggling, crammed into a small, cheap hotel. I heard that Chloe was beaten by Mark and then hospitalized for a miscarriage. The only time Mark visited her in the hospital was when he ran out of money and demanded Chloe return the gifts he had previously given her. Chloe was so enraged that she had a breakdown in the hospital, was diagnosed with a mental disorder, and confined to a psychiatric ward. After our divorce case went to court due to our ample evidence, Mark was ordered to leave the marriage with nothing and compensate me for the $3 million he had embezzled from the company. Mark knelt before me, begging, "Alice, it's not like you're short of $3 million. Why must you be so ruthless?" I walked away without even glancing at him. This farcical chapter finally came to an end in court. Ethan was waiting for me at the door, saying he would spend my birthday with me today. I knew he must have prepared a surprise for me. At the party, he knelt on one knee to confess his feelings, but I didn't say yes immediately. However, I took the ring he offered. "Once I've completely forgotten about Mark and his family, I'll marry you," I promised. He excitedly held me in his arms and said the words I couldn't hear clearly that night. "Alice, I've waited so long for you.